my deepest apologies to those who feel as if the purpose for this was to divide our community. That was never the purpose. But when there are tough decisions to be made, especially over long periods of time that builds up, this is the reason this item was never addressed in the past, is because this was going to be difficult. Because some people feel as if this is targeted towards themselves. One of the things I say often is that as government, we make group decisions that affect people individually. It's a group decision. It's intended for the best of the greater good, but it will impact people individually. That's the nature of what happens. And so you hear that and you get that piece. So I'm not the subject matter expert when it comes to the budget, the finance. But let me just speak to this. Every property on this island pays something, whether it's the minimum tax, or it's the homeowner's tax with an exemption, or it's a rental, or it's a long-term rental, or it's a short-term rental, or it's a TV. Everyone has there's a category you fall into. So this isn't a situation where people will go from paying taxes to zero. They will never get to zero. Even the minimum tax is above that. So what will happen is people will change categories. That will determine how much taxes. But the taxes we have now, we have to balance a budget by law. We have to balance our budget. So the amount that we receive in revenue has to equal the amount that we spend. It cannot be different. So the more we bring in, the more we unfortunately spend. That's why we have a $1.26 billion budget, because that's how much revenue we make too. So whatever adjustment, one of the things government can do is adjust their taxes. We adjust the taxes every year to address shortfall or to address changes in our policies. Or we want to incentivize something. So you give a tax break to someone as a homeowner. If you become a homeowner, you get a tax exemption from the government because we want to encourage that behavior. If you do long-term rental, you get a tax exemption from the government because we want to incentivize that behavior. On the other hand, if there are things that are happening that we think does not help us, then we can tax that. So my simple answer to you, although I can't give you the calculations today, is once this, well, part of it won't be entirely this, but the UHERO report will come out. And just so I address this, you folks are here to decide on the land use zoning issue. All these other issues that have come up, while it's, obviously something you may want to know to factor in, that's for the county council to decide. They will make that decision. I made a proposal, I submitted to you folks hear the testimony, you decide how our zoning laws should be. That's your decision as the Planning Commission. Just like Lanai and Molokai made their decisions. The other things that have to do with the finances and the taxes do not fall on you. The council imposes taxes. Now we can make recommendations as administration and we can put in tax rates. So the best I can tell you, just to predict the future, is if there's a tax shortfall that will be made up in adjusting the taxes. So that's I'm just a long answer, but I did want to say the first part. So thank you for giving me that opportunity.
Thank you. That was just brought up a lot.
Any questions from our other commissioners for the mayor? He's got about 8 more minutes with us.
I hate to be so technical. I can stay long if you need me. The meeting I was going to go started at 5:30, so I'm already late.
Oh, okay.
But that's okay. That's okay. I can run there whenever I get there. But
Okay.
I wanted to give you whatever time you needed from me,
Mahalo.
considering all that you guys have given to us all in the last hearings. So please, if you need me here, I'll stay longer.
I guess
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question.
Oh, you need your mic.
Well, I appreciate you reminding us about the zoning, and that's what we are supposed to be focusing on, but I can't help but have these other questions about like advantages and disadvantages. And so say like all of these condos open up 7,000. And one of the concerns I'm consistently hearing is, well, how do we ensure that those condos go into the hands of people who live here on Maui? And so I'm just wondering if anybody has like offered solutions to you for that.
Not that specific issue, but if they become either owner occupied or long-term, I think by their very nature, they will go to somebody who resides on Maui. So, I mean, that's what we're
Yeah.
counting on, because those are the people that are looking for either short-term, long-term, or they're looking to purchase. Those would be people who decide to make Maui their home. Now, if your question is whether they originally are from Maui or not, I mean, I wouldn't know that, but I would say the whole idea is to make the inventory available for people who choose to make Maui their home.
So the assumption is that they wouldn't like, we could expect that the housing would go for people from Maui instead of, I guess my concern is like, well, what if all of these condos go for sale and then we have like offshore investors, you know?
So the person buying that unit would face the same thing that the person who currently owns the unit faces. They couldn't use it for short-term either. So if people want to own a second, third, fourth, fifth home and they can afford to do that, there's nothing we can do about that, except to increase the taxes for people who own a second, third, fourth, or fifth house. But as far as incentivizing people, try not to get into what was I heard on some of the testimony, but I'll just leave it that the goal for this is to increase inventory. Now, I heard one of the testifiers say this does not force people to go into short-term rental. And that person said they took a poll and 6% of the currently owners would convert theirs to long-term rental. 6% of 7,000 is maybe 500 something, over 5. I'll take that. I'll take 500 units. This brand new unit that you guys see across the Kehalani, across Fulan, that's the most recent homes built on Maui in the last 2 or 3 years. That's 330 units. There was a long line of people trying to get those units. So if you tell me, well, 6% is, okay, 500 something, I'll take them right now. But, our goal is that there be more than 6%. But I'm going to respect the person who said that as saying that's the numbers they came back with. That's not bad news. That's okay to good news. So, but I suspect those numbers will be higher. Again, the person who buys it steps in the shoes of the person who just had it. I mean, if you have it, it can be your second home. But think about somebody who owns several units. You can only live in one. So if you have 5 or 10, you're going to live in one. What you going to do with the others? Keep them vacant? Okay. I mean, it's your choice, especially if you're losing money on this. If you're losing money on this investment and you're going to lose money anyway, at least lose them on giving them to somebody with a long term. If you're losing money using it as a short term, then maybe switch the model and rent it to somebody long term. I don't know how many people are losing money. It seems like everybody's losing money using it for short term. So maybe that's not a good model.
Any questions from our commissioners online? I do have another question that's come up with testimony. One thing is like in some respects, our ordinances are only as good as how much they can be enforced. And the subject of illegal STRs has come up a lot in testimony. So do you have a plan to address those? Because, it's been said that they would provide a lot of tax revenue also were they to be brought into the fold legally. Do you have comments on that?
Absolutely. First of all, the person enforcing that, you're sitting next to her right now. That's her department and her division that does that enforcement. We've already tried to do a couple of things to make that enforcement better. You might remember there was a previous, letter from the managing director of the county some years ago that said the county would not pursue anonymous complaints. Now, there's good reason for that, and that was for countywide. But I reversed that. I sent out a letter last year saying, no, we're going to take every complaint, even if it's anonymous. And the reason I say that is, I have some experience with investigations, criminal investigations, and other stuff. The fact of the matter is, the anonymous complaint can tell you, oh, the address is 102 First Avenue. We have suspects this thing's happening. Why would you not pursue that? Why would you not investigate that? You don't have to have the person standing outside the house telling you their story. They just pointed you in a direction. You can decide if you can gather enough information. I mean, you got to do some investigation, whatever, watch to see if that's true or not. So I didn't understand how we wouldn't pursue an anonymous because the person doesn't leave their name or say who they are, whether it's true or false. We're not talking about reporting a domestic violence crime or something that you needed a witness for or whatever. This is something that you can follow up on. So that's one step we took in that direction. But I think there's nobody, not the hotels, not the legal temporary TVR owners or anybody else who likes the illegal short-term rentals. Nobody. They don't pay any taxes to the county. We don't get anything from that. They still take up the resources in their neighborhood. But it is kind of like reporting either a fireworks violation or maybe a domestic violence case where the neighbors don't want to rat out their neighbors. But that is something that I think all the mayors are concerned about. Kauai does a pretty good job on their island of controlling that. I'll just say that. And mostly what they do is they put their investigators on in the evenings. They come on a late shift. They don't do the 9 to 5 when, they come on after. So, I mean, that's some things we've talked about. And there are probably other strategies we can learn about. So we want to be very aggressive. And that's for an entirely different reason. But of course, those units could also be used for long-term rentals.
Hello. Additional questions from the commission? Commissioner Lindsay?
So there's been some testimony regarding this being kind of a blanket fix for every area. A lot of Lahaina people showed up in general to do that, and Lahaina is different than Kihei, is different from Wailuku. And is that a concern of yours, that is just blanket fixing this for now? Like, are there other plans to possibly drop some TMKs out of the apartment that are maybe existing as resorts? Or this is the first and then we're going forward?
Okay, I'm not sure which of those three I'll answer, but I think I'll answer it in a way that'll address all that. And thank you for asking me in that way, because I think that's a really fair question and something that should be talked about more. This is the opening of this discussion, the discussion that has had to happen for some time now. And I'm sorry that it's fallen on your watch right now. But I think most of us, if not all of us, can agree that this is just long overdue talking about. Your question is valid because there are some units that if I were that person, I would want to be designated as a hotel, not as an apartment. I mean, if you walk like a duck, you quack like a duck, and you look like a duck, you're a duck. But you got to come out and say that. You got to do something in the affirmative. You got to come to the commission or the council and say, we want to be designated as a hotel. We're not an apartment. We were not intended to be an apartment. It's not for the administration to go out and anoint them. Well, you're a hotel, you're an apartment, you're a hotel, you're an apartment. That's not our function. It's not our expertise. But there's nothing that has stopped anyone who has owned any of these units within the Minatoya list, that's all I'm talking about here, from being designated as a hotel, if that's what you wanted. Now, I don't know what the advantages are of being designated an apartment, even though you're a hotel, but in an apartment zone. I know we charge less for apartment. Taxes are less for apartments than hotels. But I don't know the reason. So I would say that this is not a blanket to answer it in those terms. This is the start of a discussion. And we should take deep dives on these. And I suspect that will by the time this is all said and done. But likewise, there are those that are clearly apartments that were always intended to be apartments that shouldn't be designated as hotels. And again, we're talking about the zoning. They were built in the apartment zone areas, knowing the distinction between an apartment and a hotel. We just want to straighten that out because right now it's so kapakahi, which is why we're having this problem. So let's just call it what it is. Designate the hotels, charge them the hotel rates, allow them what the benefits of being a hotel. Hotels, you can have food and beverage, you can do certain things in hotel zones that you cannot do in apartment zones. And then call the apartments, and let's try to have that be either homeowners, like we currently have. Many of those buildings or apartments have long-term renters and owners that live in them. Proof that they can be lived in by local people. So again, I think you'll see things on the spectrum. Something obviously hotel, something obviously apartment, and then you're gonna have some in the middle. So let's sort them out.
Additional questions? The commissioners online? Commissioner Lindsay?
I do have a concern about the phase out period being a little bit short. Just, like leasing it for a short while for some people. Also like the deadline with FEMA housing.
Sure.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think that's very fair. Some people would say this is 35 years past due though. People who have been able to use this not for the stated purpose for 35 years. But you make a very good point because the people today, let me just tell you the story behind that. I am the one who set the times, not my team. I got lots of advice and I made the decision. And the biggest reason I did that was to point to the urgency that this deserves, that this should be dealt with. You cannot say this is an emergency, needs to be done right away and say, let's take 5 years. I mean, you can, but you defeat your purpose. So that's why we made Lahaina at one designation and we made the rest of the island the other to distinguish where the urgency was and why there's an urgency. However, having said that, and hearing all that has been said and much that has been talked about, it would go smoother if you decided to recommend to the council whatever it is you folks decide. I just wanted to explain why that was done. Now, if you look at the case law that our attorneys research and look into, in some places it has been average 2 years, some as short as 1 year. Can you go longer? Of course. It's a phase out period. So you ask yourself, how long does someone need to phase out a short-term rental to switch from one to the other? How long does it take for you to cancel your bookings or to say, we're not taking any more? How long does that take? And again, I don't mean to keep repeating this, but if honestly, if people are not making any money at all for doing this, then what is the holdup like? And if you are making money, then just say so, and then we can acknowledge that too, and say, I'd like to make a little bit more money before I shut down this. That's for other people to decide, not me. I mean, I just made the recommendation, the suggestion, but I understand this is going to be vetted by the public, by you folks, by the council. Again, what we put out was just the initial discussion, so that it could get the feedback that you've been getting. I hope that answers your question.
Additional questions from the commission? One more, go ahead.
So my feelings on commissioners in the planning commission, we're all people of Maui. We all appreciate this place. We grew up here. So our geographic location doesn't really define like in the council would where we are and what we have expertise over. I want to say expertise, but it could be a different word. And right as of now, we don't have a Kihei commissioner. Kihei South Maui commissioner.
Correct.
And South Maui is unique in that it covers many ahupua'a and affects regions like Ma'alaya, that affects West Side, Wailuku, and
Sure.
South Maui.
You're right.
And so we are looking forward to having a South Maui commissioner, and that I think having a commissioner would make people, the community, South Maui residents, a little bit more happy about making these kind of decisions that greatly affects their community. Our community, without having a South Maui representative here. I know you're looking hard, but do you have anything to say on that, or because you're the person who picks them and it all goes through this process?
Yeah, I mean, my pick was rejected by the council. And so I should say preliminarily, they do not have the votes. And so the council will make their decision at their, whatever the next meeting is, and I will have 10 days to replace that name, and I will replace that name in less than 10 days.
Okay, great.
Any additional questions? Questions from our commissioners online? Good. Okay, I think that's all we got for
I
you.
just want to say on behalf of the entire community, thank you for the work you folks have been doing and the work you continue to do. It's a tough job being a community leader. I don't know that your job is to please the most or what have you. I think what our mantra is to help the most and hurt the least, harm the least in what you do. But I just thank you for taking the time. You've obviously taken this very seriously from all the effort you guys have put in. And again, I know you've gotten some thanks from some of the community, but I really think you should understand this is a big moment for everybody. And you are the right people to make these calls. So we'll live with whatever decision you guys make. Thank you so much.
Mahalo. Thank you for being here.